Killing a god does not save you from becoming one. In Final Fantasy, the strongest beings claw their way past mortal limits only by giving up the very thing that made them mortal: their body, their mind, sometimes their name. Every sword swing on this list is really a countdown to the moment its wielder stops being human at all. Sephiroth. Death didn't stop him, it just made him harder to hit. Sephiroth dies in Nibelheim, run through by his own protege, dumped into the life stream like any other corpse, except he doesn't stay a corpse. He comes back as something closer to a virus than a man, a will that infects bodies instead of occupying one. The official story is simple. Elite soldier, laced with Genova cells, cooked in Mako until his strength, speed, and healing broke past anything human. That alone would make him the strongest thing in Midgar. It's also the least interesting fact about him. A soldier with a big sword is a threat. A soldier who can die and keep operating is something else entirely. His true will sits in the northern crater while copies of him walk around wearing other people's faces, and he uses that distance to reach into Cloud's head and rearrange it from the inside. He kills President Shinra without breaking stride. He puts his blade through Aerith with the precision of someone who never considered losing. Then he pulls Meteor down on the whole planet, not as a threat but as an actual attempt to erase it. By Advent Children, he's rebuilding himself through Kadaj, coming back swinging hard enough to shred a fully powered Cloud, one strike throwing shockwaves that flatten the ground around him. Every version of him costs someone everything. That's the price tag nobody in Midgar wanted to read. But the one being who could reliably beat this planetary curse in single combat wasn't a god at all. He was a failed soldier who couldn't even remember who he was. Cloud Strife. A regular soldier is not supposed to beat a god twice. Cloud does it anyway, and it should not be possible. He starts as a standard Shinra infantryman, nothing special, nothing enhanced. Then Hojo gets his hands on him, floods his body with Mako and Genova cells, and turns an ordinary grunt into something that trades blows with soldiers' finest. He never even finished the program. Doesn't matter, the science did the rest, whether he consented to it or not. The Buster Sword alone weighs more than most men could lift off the ground, let alone swing. Cloud spins it, redirects it midair, and eventually upgrades to the fusion swords, blades that separate and reassemble like a puzzle designed by someone who hates physics. Then there's Omnislash. In Advent Children, he splits into dozens of after-images and shreds Sephiroth in seconds, moving faster than the eye can track. That's not soldier training, but the swords are almost the least impressive part. The real fight happens inside his own head. Genova and Sephiroth spend years trying to unmake his identity, feeding him false memories, rewriting who he thinks he is. Most Genova hosts break completely and stay broken. Cloud claws his way back and reassembles himself piece by piece, arguably a harder fight than anything with a blade in it. Then he takes that reassembled mind into the sky above Midgar and matches Sephiroth swing for swing, shockwaves rippling off every clash, surviving impacts that would flatten a building. Whether that makes him truly stronger or just narratively lucky gets argued to death. Even people who love Cloud will admit Sephiroth probably wins the rematch on paper. A mortal matching a monster is one thing, but what happens when a soldier doesn't just match a god, but gets remade into a servant of one, handed powers no human was ever meant to hold? Lightning. A former security sergeant ends her story by killing the god who made her. Not a monster, not a warlord, the actual creator of her universe. That sentence alone should feel wrong, since it does not fit the shape of a normal power fantasy, because normally the sword only gets you so far up the ladder before something bigger than steel takes over. Lightning starts as exactly what she looks like. Claire Farron, a cop in bottom, marked by a fal'Cie, and turned into a LCA against her will, which hands her devastating magic, superhuman reflexes, and paradigm shifting that lets her flip between Commando and Ravager mid-fight. That is already more than most soldiers ever touch. It is still technically a human being with power bolted on. Then the ceiling moves. In Thene 2, she opens the game trading blows with Caius Ballad above Valhalla, while time itself warps around them, parrying magic on a battlefield that does not run in a straight line. By Lightning Returns, she is not LT anymore. She is Bunivel's chosen instrument, a demigod running on a 13-day countdown, ferrying souls toward a new world and surviving conditions built to end reality. Nothing in the games spells out an exact power ranking against other franchise deities, but follow where the evidence points. She confronts Bunivelze directly, a being who reshapes worlds and souls at will, and she wins. That fight ends his grip on humanity's fate for good. The community still argues over whether that spike is earned or just handed to her by the plot. Fair fight, but the result stands either way. A woman who once broke up bar fights for a living becomes the one exception, a godslayer, and it cost her the last pieces of being simply human. She had to be remade by a god to kill one. But another prince paid an even steeper price. 10 years of his life swallowed whole, all to earn a light he'd only get to use once. Noctis. Lucis Caelum, a king who wins by dying, is still just a king who dies. Noctis Lucis Caelum spends the entirety of Final Fantasy XV building toward a fight he was never going to walk away from, and everyone around him knows it. He starts as the crown prince of Lucis, carrying the Ring of the Luci like a loaded weapon he is not yet allowed to fire. The ring channels the power of every king who came before him. Through the armature, he can summon a full arsenal of spectral royal weapons and throw all of them at once, spinning blades orbiting his body like he raided an entire dynasty's armory in a single breath. His warp strike lets him teleport straight to a thrown weapon or marked point, turning battlefields into something closer to a puzzle solved at the speed of light. None of that is exaggeration. That is baseline Noctis. Before the story asks anything of him, then it asks everything. Noctis enters the crystal and stays there for 10 straight years, emerging with the collective power of the entire Lucian bloodline compressed into one body. He returns to face Arden Izunia, a man who survived centuries of demonic corruption and still walks around with the patience of someone who has already won before. Their final fight is not subtle. Full King of Light abilities, massive magical blasts, an arsenal of summoned weapons, and light that physically purges demon corruption from existence. It ends the Star Scourge. It also ends Noctis. That is the trade fans keep circling. Some read the King of Light as reality warping on a cosmic scale, a being who briefly touches something close to godhood. Nothing in the game states that outright, and the evidence stays modest. What it does confirm is simpler and heavier. He becomes a beacon powerful enough to burn out a plague that had been eating the world for generations, and the cost is his entire future. Compare that to a woman who once ended a god and lived to keep breathing. Noctis ends a plague and gets a funeral. So far the price has been identity or life. But the next figure paid neither, because he was never sane to begin with, and unlike everyone before him, he actually won. Kefka Palazzo. Every villain before him touched godhood, and it cost them everything they were. Kefka touched it, and it cost him nothing, because there was nothing left to lose. That is the joke sitting underneath Final Fantasy VI, and it is not a funny one. Kefka Palazzo was the first human ever infused with Magatech, an experiment meant to build a soldier. Instead, it shattered his mind permanently, while somehow leaving him stronger, faster, and nearly impossible to kill. The lab wanted a weapon. It built something closer to a warning. Zero loyalty came with the upgrade. Kefka betrays Emperor Gestahl the moment betrayal is useful, moves all 3 Warring Triad statues himself, and absorbs their power directly into his body. Those statues hold the entire balance of magic in place. The instant Kefka takes them, the planet's surface tears itself apart. Continents shift, ecosystems collapse, civilization gets shoved to the edge of extinction in one uninterrupted cutscene. He does not vanish, rampage, or self-destruct like a lesser final boss. He builds a tower, sits on top of the ruined world, and fires a constant beam of judgment down onto whatever settlements dare rebuild. People do not resist him because they cannot. They just wait to see whose town gets erased next. Somewhere under that beam is someone who lost a home, a family, a reason to keep walking, all because one broken man decided the world owed him a throne. That is the cost this section keeps circling back to, except this time the man causing it is the one still standing at the end. Every hero on this list bled to stop someone like him. Kefka never bled for anything, and that is exactly why he won. The final fight against him is not a battle against a person anymore. It is a battle against divine wrath wearing a clown's face, warping the battlefield with magic no sane mind should be able to wield. Sanity, it turns out, was never the requirement. Losing it was ruling a broken world is terrifying. But there are beings who don't want to rule anything, because ruling still assumes a world exists, and their whole purpose is to make sure nothing does. Exdeath. He looks like a guy in a suit of armor you'd forget by the credits. What he actually does is delete the concept of a place existing. Exdeath isn't a warlock. That's the costume. Underneath the plate mail is a tree, and inside that tree is a prison holding centuries of concentrated evil, souls packed so tightly they woke up as one mind with one goal. That goal was never conquest. It was access to something called the Void, a force that doesn't destroy what's in front of it, it erases the fact that it was ever there at all. And he gets it. Exdeath cracks the seals and starts feeding the world to the Void. Castles vanish. Chunks of the map just stop existing. Not rubble, not ruins, nothing. Then he does something no sword-swinging villain on this list even attempts. He merges two separate worlds into one, folding entire planets together like he's folding a map in half. Kefka broke reality and ruled the wreckage. Exdeath skips the ruling part and goes straight for deletion. By the time you fight his true form, he's not a knight anymore. He's a towering horror throwing Almagest and Grand Cross, spells built to gut a full party in one cast. Kill him and the Void doesn't die with him. It curdles into Neo Exdeath, a shapeless thing whose entire function is erasing memory itself, so nobody remembers there was ever anything to lose. That's the trade every person on this list keeps making without realizing it. Chase enough power and the thing you're fighting for stops mattering, because the power itself only wants to erase. Erasing space is one kind of ending, but there's a being who tried something worse than deleting the world, folding every moment that ever happened or ever will into a single point she alone could hold. Ultimecia. She almost won by simply refusing to stop existing in order. Ultimecia is a sorceress from a future so far out it barely qualifies as fiction anymore, and her real weapon was never a spell. It was patience stretched across centuries. She reaches back through time by possessing sorceresses who haven't even met her yet, riding inside Edea like a passenger who bought the ticket decades in advance. Erasing a location off the map is one thing. Reaching into someone's body 100 years before you're born is a different category of threat. Her actual goal makes that look small. Ultimecia wants time compression, dragging past, present, and future into one continuous moment she alone controls. Not travel, not a loop, ownership of the whole timeline collapsed into her hands, and she pulls it off. Time compression actually begins, warping reality so hard, the party has to physically cross broken, distorted temporal space just to reach her. That's proof of concept, not a threat she almost lands. She did it. Her final battle escalates to match. She sheds forms and grows into something towering and quasi-divine, fused with cosmic machinery, throwing time itself as a weapon at a party built to survive anything a sword could answer for. Fans still argue what full stabilization would have meant. Some read it as every era collapsing into one reshapeable point, Ultimecia sitting at the center like a god with editing rights over reality. The game never draws that ceiling in exact terms, so treat it as the strongest read, not confirmed fact. But follow what she already proved, and the implication holds. She was only stoppable because her masterpiece wasn't finished, and a girl who wanted permanence got erased by the one window where she still had a past to lose. Compressing time is a bid to control what exists, but there is a level above controlling reality, held by the one who authored it, who built the very gods everyone else was merely fighting. Bunevelze. Every villain in this list wanted to break reality. Bunevelze already owned it. That is the jump you need to sit with for a second. Gods who bend time, monsters who fracture dimensions, tyrants who rewrite the rules of a whole planet, all of them are still operating inside a system somebody else built. Bunevelze built the system. He is the creator god of the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos, the one who made the universe itself, and he did not stop there. He made the other gods too. Pulse and Linzai, the deities entire earlier games treated as the ceiling of divine power, are his creations. Imagine spending a whole trilogy being terrified of your landlord's landlord. His plan was simple and quietly monstrous. Build a perfect static paradise, move human souls into it, discard whatever he decides is imperfect, which in practice means discarding whoever he decides is imperfect. No debate, no appeal, just a god doing spring cleaning with your soul in the pile. That is a scarier sentence than anything Ultimecia ever said out loud, because Ultimecia wanted power. Bunevelze already had it and just wanted things tidier. He fights lightning across multiple phases in a realm he built himself, throwing elemental magic and reality-warping attacks that require her to be standing at the exact peak she clawed her way to. Remember what it took to get her there. Remember what that ascent cost her. She needed every ounce of it just to survive being in the room with him. She wins. Humanity gets an uncertain future instead of a curated one. But a creator god sits near the top of this entire hierarchy, and he was beaten by a mortal remade into something else, which raises the real question no swordsman wants to hear. Can anyone who stays human actually climb this high? The Warrior of Light, one hero in this entire franchise, has killed more gods than anyone else on this list and still remembers their own name. That should not be possible. Every rung on this ladder so far has come with a price tag written in blood, sanity, or identity. This one just keeps winning and walking away looking exactly the same. The Warrior of Light starts as nobody. Just another adventurer doing odd jobs in a fantasy world. The kind of character you would forget by the credits. Then Hydaelyn, the Mother Crystal itself, marks them as her champion and hands them the Echo, a power that resists mind control and lets them glimpse the past like a rewind button on reality. From there, the body count gets absurd. Ifrit, Titan, Garuda, primal deities, actual living gods summoned by desperate believers, and this one adventurer puts every single one of them down. Then it gets worse for the gods. Across Heavensward, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and Endwalker, the warrior starts fighting things that make primals look like tutorial bosses. Ascian overlords, imperial legions that erase nations. Emet Selch, a member of an ancient convocation who can rewrite pieces of reality and summon calamities on command. The warrior beats him too. By Endwalker, they are walking through space-like metaphysical realms and confronting the literal origin of the final days at the edge of the universe's conceptual structure, cosmic stakes, and they are still just a person with a sword. Fans argue about how to even rank this. The job system means the warrior might be swinging a greatsword one fight and casting black magic the next, which makes clean power scaling messy. But volume is volume, and nobody else on this list has a kill count like this while staying a person. 'Cause that is the trick. They only ever beat what already exists inside the world. Never once do they get to rewrite it themselves. A mortal can beat gods and stay themselves. But there is a final class of beings that were never mortal, never sane, and never even people entities that are the erasing force itself, rather than anyone who wields it. Other god-tier characters. Cloud of Darkness does not want your world. She wants your world to have never existed at all. That is not villainy. That is not even ambition. In Final Fantasy III, she is described as a force seeking to return everything to nothingness, and that single detail closes a loop. This video opened when it talked about the Void as an idea. She is that idea with a face and a body and zero interest in negotiating. Exdeath wanted to become the Void. Cloud of Darkness never had to want it. She just is it, an originating force instead of a mortal who clawed his way toward one. Sin, from Final Fantasy X, does not erase concepts. It erases cities. A whale-shaped weapon built by Yu Yevon out of grief and punishment, it leveled Zanarkand, and it has spent centuries since flattening airships, armies, and anything else humanity builds that gets too proud. Zero warning, zero mercy. Just a slow-moving apocalypse that shows up on schedule. The Emperor of Final Fantasy II somehow makes death a promotion. He dies and splits into two separate rulers, one commanding hell, the other commanding heaven. Most villains lose everything when the story kills them. He got a dual monarchy. Then there's Shantaro, a small Tarutaru professor who treats apocalyptic black magic like a party trick, which is either the funniest or the most terrifying detail in this entire list depending on how you look at it. Every hero this video covered clawed for power and paid for it in blood, sanity, or self. These four never had to pay anything, because none of them were ever people trying to become gods. They were the ceiling itself, wearing whatever shape the story needed that day. The strongest thing in Final Fantasy was never the one holding the sword. It was whatever could erase the sword, the hand, and the reason either existed. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.